Rocky Top Insider instant reaction to Tennessee baseball's 6-5 win over Mississippi State Friday night in Hoover Met Stadium here in Hoover, Alabama at the SEC tournament. In another elimination game, Tennessee stays alive here in Hoover. They're now 2-1 so far in Hoover. They'll play Vanderbilt on Saturday night. But before we look ahead, we have a thrilling game to recap here. Ryan Schumpert with me. As always, I'm Jack Foster. Ryan, a 6-5 win that had a bunch of storylines to it. Tennessee gets it done here in Hoover. What's your biggest takeaway from tonight's win?
Oh man, that's a good question. Takeaway, I think, it's probably what Andrew Winkie did in the eighth inning. Just from you're thinking about long term stuff and what Tennessee wants to achieve this weekend, and for him to come in and look really good, 1, 2, 3 inning, 2 strikeouts. I thought that was super impressive, and he was. I think we said it even after the Vanderbilt game. He was the one guy, though, even though he gave up a run in an inning pitch, he looked better. It felt like than the other guys. So I think from a takeaway standpoint, that's probably it. From maybe what I'm most thinking about here couple, I don't know when the game ended. It's been a long day, but an hour after the game ended or so, it's just kind of that fifth inning brouhaha and the intensity of this game, which was a really fun one at the SEC tournament.
Yeah, it was a great environment tonight in Hoover. Packed house Friday night. This is when everybody really comes out, and you have a great environment here at the SEC tournament. But and tonight was a pretty normal Friday night game. I'd say there was nothing out of the ordinary until that fifth inning. Really, Mississippi State's bench pretty much cleared. Tennessee was on the field. They were playing defense, so Mississippi State comes out, and it got heated there for a moment. Christian Moore especially was in the mix of it. And Tony Vitello got a little bit involved as well. But umpires did a good job of, kind of dying everything down, and there was nothing crazy that ended up happening. But you had to think that after that happened, Tennessee had a little bit of extra fire to them tonight in order to, advance in this tournament.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I think it just raised the level of intensity to an extra notch on a night that, like you said, it was a really good crowd. Seemed like a sellout crowd, basically completely full. And obviously there were some neutral fans there, but between the Mississippi State and the Tennessee fans, which was the vast majority of people there, felt pretty close to 50-50. So it just kind of raised the intensity. I don't know if it necessarily raised the stakes, but it gave an extra, boost or jolt for both teams. I think Mississippi State coach Chris Lemonis said he felt like they were, I'm not sure the word he used, it wasn't dead, but a little lethargic kind of at that point. And he felt like that kind of sparked them. And a game that to that point, Tennessee had really completely dominated. They'd only scored 3 runs, but just constantly were threatening, had guys on base, and then Drew Beam, until obviously things had gotten away from him before because he was getting pulled when all that stuff broke out. But before 2 outs in the fifth inning, had been really, really dominant. So yeah, it definitely raised the intensity and made this one a super fun atmosphere, and a super fun game.
Yeah, it was a 5 spot for the Bulldogs in that fifth inning. And outside of that, they were shut out by Tennessee. Tennessee pitchers combined, 8 scoreless innings basically. Outside of that fifth inning, Tennessee dominated this game, outscoring Mississippi State 5-0. And you talk about Drew Beam. We know that the storyline going in was he was going to be on a little bit of a pitch count. I figured around 80 pitches, and that's what he threw. Maybe he would have thrown more had he not gotten into so much trouble there in the fifth. But 84 pitches for Drew Beam, 5 earned runs allowed. I think he was better than what the stat line indicates tonight.
Oh yeah, I mean way better because he ends up giving 5 earned runs. He hadn't given up a hit until the fifth inning with I think 1 out. I think it was 4 1/3 that he'd gone without giving up a hit, and he was so close really 3 times to getting out of the inning of 3 straight pitches. Really, first one, or Cal Stark can't catch a tip third strike, and then a pitch that we're off centered. So I haven't seen a replay, so I'm not sure. I don't want to say for sure whether it was a strike or a ball or not, but one pitch that definitely looked, from our angle, looked pretty good. Drew Beam definitely thought he was out of the inning with the 2-2 pitch, and then the 3-2 pitch, I think he thought he was out of the inning with as well. Both of them called balls, extends the inning, loads the bases, and so yeah, it was really good up to that point. And even then he gives up 2 hits in that inning, and both one was I guess the second one that tied the game was a single up the middle. The first one was just kind of a ground ball that found an opening in the infield. So he it felt like one of the better games he's had throwing the ball this season. And like you just said, his final line was not indicative of how well he pitched tonight.
Yeah, and it was that Connor Huzak 2-run single to tie the game that really sent everything, into a bit of craziness here in Hoover Met when the tensions rose and everything got pretty wild. Tony Vitello talked about what happened there with the brouhaha after the game. I'm sure we'll have a story up on RocketTopInsider.com of Tony's full transcript of the video as well, so you can go check it out then because it's a lot to break down. He talked for like 2 straight minutes about it, but there's no big takeaway from it. I don't really know what the main culprit was of the whole situation. There were some chirping from the Mississippi State players to Tony, and of course, Tony's not going to take that, so that was part of it. Of course, people were chirping Beam when he was leaving, so it was probably a lot going on in one moment, and people asking, hey, well, what was really the cause of all that? I think there was a lot of things that kind of built up in that moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tony, I think what he said, what it sounded like he said is that, the Mississippi State players were calling him Tony. And, I'm sure he was a little upset about it. He didn't really go charging over there or anything like that. Really, it was Cal
No, I
Stark.
thought
And
he
like you
kept
said,
his cool really.
yeah,
He did a great job of keeping his cool.
which is kind of what surprised me because in his quote, he was kind of like, oh, I kind of felt like I maybe acted a little bit like a fool. And Tony has some self depreciating stuff that he'll say in post game press conferences sometimes. So it kind of maybe just felt like that because I wouldn't have thought it had anything to do with him. I mean, he kind of walked over there calmly once everything had spiraled up a little bit. But yeah, I think it was just a lot of words being shared. And obviously, I don't know. The thing is, it was Christian Moore and Cal Stark had. It felt like there was maybe one thing particular that was said that kind of sparked him, because it was a very immediate, snap, demonstrative response from those guys. But yeah, I mean, this is SEC baseball, high stakes, and there's obviously plenty of talking, and I don't think it was anything too crazy, and obviously it never really got out of hand. Umpires got in between them pretty quick, and it was never anything more than just words being shared.
A couple of guys we really need to hit on, given their performances tonight. One being Dean Curley, 2 of 5 at the plate with an RBI. Dean Curley was hitless in the South Carolina series, struggled for the most part. Nashville was great in Florida, but really we haven't seen Dean Curley be that consistent at the plate. Pretty big night from Tennessee's shortstop there offensively for Dean Curley tonight. It's got to be good to see.
Yeah, no doubt, and I feel like whether it was yesterday or Wednesday, he had. I guess it probably was yesterday, just given the way the game on Wednesday went. He had another good night at the plate earlier this week. I think maybe it was actually Wednesday. I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening to this. I'm sorry for my mind ramblings. But he's bounced. The key being he's bounced back and had a good week, and he had a good week tonight. Obviously, he had Tennessee's first RBI hit of the game because Tennessee's first 2 runs came on a sac fly and then a double steal where Christian Moore got caught stealing second, and I think it was maybe Reese Chapman was safe at home. So a good game for Dean Curley for sure, and a good sign for a guy that is going to be in there. And Tennessee's not asking a ton out of him. They need him to have competitive at bats and get on base at a somewhat consistent rate for Tennessee to be at reach its ceiling offensively.
Dean Curley he was 1 of 2 at the plate with a walk against Vanderbilt, so pretty solid night. And then he was 0 for 3, I believe, against A&M with a walk as well. So, it's been a pretty solid week, and I think tonight was his best game of the week so far for Dean Curley. Reese Chapman as well started at the designated hitter spot the first 2 games here in Hoover. Did not get to start tonight, but quickly pinch hit for Robin Villeneuve and was in the DH spot for the majority of the game, for the rest of the game, I do believe, until he got ran for late, but that doesn't really count. So for all intents and purposes, played the rest of the game. Went 2 for 3 at the plate. I think that Reese Chapman this week has proven that he should be the everyday DH for Tennessee.
Agree. Second, yeah, good. 100%. He's been great at the plate all week. He feels like he's finally given Tennessee some consistency. The last couple of weeks, Tennessee's, they found something. It hasn't been a black hole for him the way it was for really 4 series in a row. But it was different people, and no one really had a bunch of consistency. It feels like Reese this week has found some consistency after probably being the guy last week against South Carolina who had the most good moments from people who've gotten that spot. So it feels like it should be him. I completely agree with that. I asked Tony Vitello about that after the game, and he said, yeah, no, he's given us more to think about. So to me, you start Reese Chapman every game. You have those options still. Feel free to pinch hit for him if he's having some bad at bats. I think that's completely fair. But at this point, to me, I think every day Tony Vitello writes that lineup card. Reese Chapman needs to be the starting designated hitter.
Also worked a walk. I forgot to mention to load the bases. So just a really great night from Chapman.
Really good at
And
bat too, and
yeah,
a bunch of good at bats from him all week. It feels like it's
yep.
been a lot of 7-8 pitch competitive at bats, fouling stuff off with 2 strikes, and that one to load the bases was really just that.
And after he loaded the bases, Cannon Peebles pinch hits for Cal Stark, and he's able to bring a run home with fielder's choice, and then a terrible error by second baseman Amani Larry. Was that his last name? I believe
Monty Larry,
for
yep.
Mississippi State, who before that had a great game. He was a magician at second base defensively tonight, up until that moment where he sailed a throw bad over the first baseman's head, allowed a run to score, and tie the game at 5 apiece. So that was super ugly from Mississippi State. But Cannon Peebles, being able to bring in a run home. Tony Vitello talked about it post game, where Cannon Peebles has kind of been their RBI guy. To where if you're in these spots of a sack fly spot or a ground ball spot that can bring a run home, they want Cannon Peebles to go up there because he's been working good at bats like Reese Chapman has, and he's just always going to compete when he's at the plate.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, a lot of the same things I just said about Reese Chapman could be said for Cannon Peebles too at bats tonight. He struck out in the last one, but a competitive at bat where he fouled off a bunch of pitches. And to me, that felt like it was a theme for Tennessee tonight. It's been a theme the last 2 days. It just didn't feel like there were many quick at bats, really no quick innings. And I guess the eighth and the ninth were the 2 quickest, but even then, the eighth inning obviously started with the Blake Burke go-ahead home run, and the ninth inning, Chapman has a hit with 2 outs, and then Peebles works a really competitive at bat that he ends up striking out in. So Tennessee's offense as a whole, I felt like made it really difficult on Mississippi State's pitchers, and four different ones through. They combined to have to throw 173 pitches tonight. So it felt like a good approach. Maybe not a very explosive night for Tennessee's offense, but a good approach, and it felt like they wore on a Mississippi State team that was playing their 4th game in as many days, and you kind of knew that they probably didn't have enough pitching to, it would affect them if they had to go deep into the game like they had to.
As far as Tennessee's pitching goes, we talked about Binky and Beam. Combs relieved Beam, went 2 1/3. Maybe didn't look as his best, but his best has been absolutely lights out, but was still very good tonight. Did a great job to work around some trouble there in the 7th inning, and 4 Ks tonight for Combs. He comes in, throws 35 pitches, relieving Beam. This has been the stack they've used in these game 2s of series. Beam Combs. It worked again tonight.
Yeah, business as usual for Aaron Combs. A lot of what it's been. I think obviously Tennessee would have liked to be able to get out of that 5th inning when he came in, but he's facing one of the best hitters in the SEC and the best hitter in this Mississippi State team in Dakota Jordan. And kind of like we said with the other hits in that inning, just a ground ball between Billy Amick and Dean Curley. Obviously, it wasn't lightly hit or anything, but it wasn't just smoked either. So a bit of bad luck there. After that, like you just said, his control wasn't perfect. I guess it was that 7th inning when he walked the leadoff man on 4 pitches. But it never really got too dramatic after that. He was really good again tonight, and he kind of keeps on being Mr. Steady Eddie for Tennessee's bullpen.
Nate Snead got the save after Kirby got the first out in the 9th. Nate Snead coming in, pumping 101. I mean, just electric stuff from number 7 on the mound. And he and Tony shared a moment. We'll have a story up on it about it soon up on RockyTopInsider.com. But they were, shoving each other in the chest, yelling each other's face after the game. It was a pretty cool, passionate moment between Snead and Vitello after the game. But Snead comes in after throwing 2 2/3, I believe, in a start on Wednesday. This is more of the Nate Snead role we're used to. High leverage, late game stuff. Of course, he can give you extended relief, but nothing new here from Nate Snead. But what might be new is whatever Tennessee does tomorrow with their pitching plan, because Xander Sechrist got hot tonight. Because if Tennessee lost this game and Xander didn't didn't face a batter, Tony Vitello was not going to be a happy man. He wanted Xander Sechrist to at least get some action in Hoover. So when they were trailing, he had Xander get hot. Of course, Tennessee won the game, and he's probably going to start tomorrow, but his usage may be a little bit different considering he got warmed up tonight. So we'll have to see if he starts tomorrow. I still would imagine he would. But beyond Xander tomorrow, Ryan, it's going to be pretty thin.
Yeah, it feels like it could maybe feel a little bit like it did earlier this week against Vanderbilt. I would think, given what Nate Snead threw tonight, he'd be able to throw. He threw 10 pitches tonight. If this was a regional, there's no doubt Nate Snead would throw tomorrow. given
Yeah.
that it's not a regional and it's SEC tournament. Maybe Tennessee plays it cautious and doesn't. I still think he probably throws. Probably it's not a ton. I think AJ Russell um, probably throws tomorrow. That seems like that would make a lot of sense for Tennessee to get him some more game action. But again, it's those two guys that are obviously really good pitchers, but not sure how many outs they're really going to eat tomorrow. So it seems like it's going to circle back to maybe Dylan Loy, Marcus Phillips getting some opportunities, a lot of different guys throwing. Um, and if anything, it feels like if Tennessee's going to win tomorrow, they need either just a massive performance from the offense where they score a ton of runs, or they need Xander to, at least give them 4 or 5 innings and lessen the workload for a bullpen that's pretty fatigued. And again, this week in Hoover, I don't think Tennessee's going to push their luck too much for those guys.
Well, 4 teams remain in Hoover. Tennessee is one of them. They will get a chance at revenge against Vanderbilt tomorrow evening in Hoover, tomorrow afternoon, early evening, as game 1 tomorrow, which is game 13 of the tournament, is slated to start at noon Central Time. So probably looking at 4:30 Eastern-ish, 5 Eastern-ish for Tennessee start time against Vanderbilt. LSU is playing South Carolina in the early window. Of course, the winner of that, and then the winner of Tennessee-Vandy will face off in the championship on Sunday. It is single elimination tomorrow, so Vanderbilt does not have to lose twice. Tennessee can beat them once and advance to Sunday. Ryan, anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's about it. Maybe one thing I'll add to the Snead story. You talked about Snead when he came out of the game, and you talked about all the fire he had with Tony after the game. When he came out of the game against Vanderbilt on Wednesday, there's kind of in the outfield here at Hoover Met. There's the fence, and then there's maybe a 3 feet opening, and then above it there's another big banner that has SEC logoing. And I'm looking at it right now. It just means more Southeastern Conference. It just means more. And you can see, I'm looking at Tennessee bullpen to see who's warming up in there. I can see somebody's walking around out behind the bullpen, just pacing back and forth. And I could eventually see through that 3-foot little window that it was number 7, Nate Snead. So he was stewing after how that performance cut sideways for him against Vanderbilt, and obviously in a even more high leverage opportunity, but a little less from a workload standpoint. He bounced back and was his usual self tonight and got Tennessee to the finish line.
Yeah, no question. He wanted that one bad. No question.
Yeah,
you can tell.
No doubt about it.
Coming out there and blowing people away. Well, Tennessee moves on, beats Mississippi State. Maybe something you don't think about is the fact that Texas A&M and Mississippi State were 2 of the better teams in the SEC. That 2 of the top 3 that Tennessee didn't play this year, and they played them now back-to-back days, won them both. So Tennessee takes down 2 top 5 seeds here in Hoover in these elimination games back-to-back to move on to Saturday. For Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time from Hoover.